Hey, Kirsten. How are you?
Hey, I'm well. How about yourself?
I'm good.
Good evening, Joan, Michelle, Dan.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you
All
too.
of you. Good evening, Ben.
Good evening.
Looks like we have about 6 attendees so far, too. So good evening to you. Evening, April. Good evening, Frank.
Hello.
Give everybody just another moment to sign on. Danielle Martinez will not be joining us this evening, but I believe Scott will be joining us for as much of the time as he can, so he'll probably be logging on shortly as well. Good evening, Mr. Tanner.
Hello, good evening.
Hi, Joan.
Hi, Frank. Nice to see you.
Good to see you. You feeling okay?
I'm getting there. Thank you.
Good, good.
Yeah, I'm getting there. That COVID has its punch.
Well, you look good. It looks like you're battling it right back.
I think so. Thank you. Yeah, I'm doing all right.
Good.
2 times a charm.
Oh, dear. Good evening, Mariah.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Good evening to our 12 attendees. Thank you for joining. I think we will, I know Scott Edwards was in and out of surgery and he was going to try to pop in, so we won't delay to wait for him, but if we see him, we'll, if I don't notice somebody, please let me know. And so we can circle back and say good evening. And we were just talking about you. Oh, I guess he's still connecting to audio. Good evening, Scott.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Thank you for joining.
I'm going to try to stay on as long as I can.
Yeah, we know that you're kind of in flight, so we appreciate you joining. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and get started. And start with the opening verse. Mr. Tanner, would you be willing to read the closing verse this evening? I think you might be frozen.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. We got you now. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Okay. The true aim of education is to awaken real powers of perception and judgment in relation to life and living. For only in such awakening can lead to true freedom. Rudolf Steiner. We'll start this evening with board introductions, and we'll also introduce our guests. So my name is Kirsten Kabina. I'm the board president. I have 2 children at Mr. Miracle. And Nellie.
Nellie Grossenbacher, board member for children attending DMS.
Thank you. Dan.
Dan Franks, board treasurer, to future children at DMS. Past and future.
April.
April Sauer, board secretary, and I have a daughter at DMS.
Mr. Tanner.
John Tanner, board member.
Scott.
Scott Edwards, board member.
Ben.
Ben Fong, board member, and I've got 2 kids at DMS.
Mariah.
Mariah Moon, board member, and I have 2 children at DMS.
Thank you, everyone. And we have a few special guests this evening. Joan, if you'd like to start.
I'd be happy to start. First of all, it's wonderful to be back, sort of back in life after the death of my husband and then 2 terrible bouts with COVID. So I am back, and thank you for your patience in my not being able to be with you. But it's lovely to be here. And I did get a couple of questions from board members about speaking about how to create resiliency at home. Those weren't exactly the words, but something like that. So I thought we would look at resiliency, how to create resiliency and rhythm in our children. And I want to share with you just a brief story. When I was a Waldorf kindergarten teacher, early childhood teacher, many years ago, this little guy came in every day, and every day he would come to me and he'd say, "Miss Joan, first we're going to have playtime, right? And then we have cleanup, right? Then we have snacks, right? Then we have circle time, and then we have story." He did it every day. And the question, of course, which sort of obvious, is that what was he telling us? You know, he was telling us that he was describing this sort of overwhelming need for predictability in his life, for assurance that he could depend on the rhythm of the day. He could depend on the fact that the school was a place where that rhythm was always there. He could depend on that. And he was describing for us a fundamental truth that's really sort of one of the basis of Waldorf education, that rhythm and sameness of predictability are life-giving for children. It's sort of the elixir of childhood, this rhythm. And again, it's one of the fundamentals of what we see every day with our children in a Waldorf classroom. We know that this kind of predictability, this kind of sameness and rhythm creates resiliency in our children. And really, that's what we want. That's what we want, whether we're in a Waldorf school or not. We want our children to be resilient. And this is one of the ways it happens, is through this constancy, this predictability of what is going to happen, which creates health and vibrancy. And early on, Rudolf Steiner told us, years and years and years ago, he said this amazing statement that for a child not to have his meal on time every day at the same time is like for us if the sun didn't come up. And Margaret Meyercourt, who was one of the most famous and well-known early childhood educators, spoke to a group of us here in Prescott years and years ago when I invited her to come. And she talked about how when a child has their meal at the same time every day, their digestive juices begin to flow. And therefore, the food that they eat can be more easily digested. That tells us, doesn't it, that this constancy and this rhythm is so important. We know that adults can step back from that rhythm. You and I can step back. We don't have that kind of difficulty, although I can say that to some extent that is true, that when we don't have that rhythm, it does affect us, but it doesn't affect us the way it does children. One of the things that spoke to me in my childhood as an adult, I began to look back and see that if you walked by my father's bedroom every night at 9:15, what you would see is my father on his knees saying his prayers. I mean, what a beautiful image for a child. It wasn't just saying the prayers, but it was always knowing that that's what happened at 9:15 in my father's life. And what we're seeing today, when I am seeing in my business, in my practice, is that when children's rhythms are interrupted, we see more and more arrhythmical diseases or illnesses. I won't say diseases, but we see more and more asthmatic attacks. We see more and more stomach problems, more and more sleeping problems. We see more and more difficulties, more stomach aches. 2 years ago, we all stepped into the unknown. Every one of us. And it came quickly, it came shockingly, and in a certain sense, we all lost control over our lives, even though we weren't particularly aware of the fact that we were losing control. Some people were. Predictability was lost. Life's usual rhythms were challenged and changed, almost disappearing almost altogether. We missed so much. We missed people. We missed our relatives. We missed school. The children missed so much. Schedules went out the window. And schedules, which are sort of for many of us, the important stability of our lives. And nothing in those 2 years, particularly in the beginning, nothing is the same as it had been before. So children's lives were changed. Virtual learning, who knew about virtual learning before that as it came out? There was talk of illness, of death, masks, computer learning, screens instead of teachers. Can you imagine, just think about it. I did a lot. What it was like for very young children, particularly, to see people with masks, particularly their parents. What was it like for them? And I realized it must have been really frightening. It must have been so disconcerting. It must have been very, very difficult for children to see everyone they knew had a mask on, and they had no way of understanding what that was. So they were plunged into this world of masks, of continual conversations about the pandemic, about the virus, about illness, about death, about whether to go to school or not to go to school, worries and fears. They heard so much about the pandemic. And children heard far more than was appropriate for them to hear. And that still goes on today. I think we all know that even though the pandemic seems to be over, you think about the president of the United States speaking last night, and there was not a mask in the crowd. In Congress, there wasn't one mask. So things have changed. But what is still there is that children heard so much. They heard so many adult conversations, adults' fears, and even arguments about whether to wear a mask, whether to go to school, all of which created more uncertainty, more fear. And, children don't know how to talk about that. It's sort of a silent, I call it a silent grieving, that they don't have a way of expressing this, where they were, what they were plunged into. We know that children can't reason like we can. We try to make them reason, but we know from the theories of Waldorf education that, and this comes like a shock to many people, that children really are not ready to reason until they're 12. Until the 12-year change, children are really not ready to reason. So all of this information was coming to them that we thought maybe they understood. And of course, they didn't. And they were plunged into this sort of no man's land. I would say that in my practice, I see this silent grieving in children. I see children who are tired, children who are not getting enough sleep, children with more ADHD, children with more anxiety. So there's really a kind of what we could call a collective trauma that has spread over the world as a result of what our children experienced during the pandemic. And thank goodness it's somewhat over. But the silent message, I think, in all of this to the child that they could not articulate, that we perhaps didn't recognize, is that the world is not as safe a place as it was. And again, many children are still experiencing this kind of trauma, months and months of fear and loss and uncertainty. And I have a Prescott College student who works for me, this wonderful young man, is actually a Waldorf graduate. And in confidence, he said to me yesterday, he said, Joan, I'm having to go to therapy for the first time. And he's so happy. He's so outgoing. You would never think this boy needed therapy, but he said, it's been too hard for so long and I need support. So if he, at 22 years old, has to say that, what is it like for our children? And then it came home to me very directly when my 16-year-old grandson said to me just a couple of days ago, he said, Grandma, I hope the war will be over in 2 years. And I realized he was talking about the war in Ukraine and the draft, which hadn't even occurred to me. So at 16, he's worrying about being drafted in 2 years. So we have this world of worry for our children. So what can we do? And I can bring only a bit, just a very, very small picture of some of the things that will help our children with what they have had to go through in the past 2 years or more. First of all, try to keep adult conversations away from children and tweens. Keep conversations about the war in Ukraine away. That terrifies them. We don't need to talk about the pandemic. We don't need to talk about people who have died. They don't need to know what's in the newspapers. They'll get that early enough. They'll get that when they're 12, if they're in a Waldorf school. They'll get this information that they need. Right now, they don't need it. All it does is contribute to anxiety. One of the things I heard the other day, or I actually read in a Waldorf publication, was don't read about the war and about the pandemic before you go to sleep at night. Well, every night I check the news. I check my CNN app just before I go to sleep. And I realized it's not good for me. It's not good for me, just like it isn't good for the children to hear about this. They can't process it. It's adult information. And remember that anything you say in front of the child is taken in very deeply, even though they can't articulate, they can't speak about it. But I say to parents all the time, stop talking so much. And I say that to myself, stop talking, because we adults talk too much with children. We ask them too many questions. We ask them how they feel. They don't know how they feel, but we ask them how they feel. They have no way of knowing that, really. They'll say whatever comes into their mind. So stop talking and listen more. Stop asking and listen more. And I'm saying that to myself, not just to all of us. We could talk about that topic a lot, because I think it's a very critical one for most parents in modern America today. Secondly, and this is something I'm sure you all do, but is try to create a home rhythm. Often families, all of us who work, all of us who are busy, we can't always have family meals together. What if we could have maybe one family meal together a day? What if we can't do that? What if we could have one special meal a week, but somehow create a rhythm that your children can look forward to, that they know is predictable, they know is going to happen? Creating something that is for the whole family, a hike, a bike ride, whatever works for you, but create within your family rhythms that the children can expect. Just that little boy coming in, first we do this, then we do this, then we do this. It really is like food for them. And knowing when you do that, you're consciously thinking about, I am creating rhythm and certainty for my child. And that's another topic we could spend days on, speaking about the need to create a rhythm in our home life. Like my dad doing his prayers every night at 9:15. The third thing, and again, this is a big topic, is evening and bedtimes. In my many years of work, I was thinking tonight, how many years has it been? And I was horrified to think it's been actually 60 years that I've been working with children. And things have changed dramatically over those years. I mean, years and years ago, I did not see the anxiety. I didn't see the exhaustion. I didn't see the worried faces or the ADHD that I see today. And that's not to blame anybody. It's a sign of the times. It's a sign of how the world is. But bedtime, evenings and bedtimes are the magical times for children. And they're so important that we create a rhythm around that. Children who don't get enough sleep are often hyperactive, often could fit the classification of ADHD. They're cranky, they're often ill, they're difficult to get along with, they're difficult at school, they have anxiety problems. What is well known, particularly in Waldorf circles, is that a school-age child needs at least 10 hours of sleep at night. 12 is better. And I see people nodding. That means that hopefully that's what's happening within your family. Creating that bedtime routine, again, is like a lifeblood for them. The same thing every night, whatever that is, whether that's having a story first and then a candle. And lighting that candle brings that soft glow into the room, and the child can go to sleep. And you can blow it out when you leave, but lighting that candle and that soft glow really helps the child to slip into that sleep where he can go into his heavenly home at night in such a peaceful way. And this gentle, calm routine is again, it's like an elixir. It's like medicine. The same thing every night. The beauty of putting your child to bed. And it's one of the most important rhythms that you can create. The other thing is that children don't choose the time that they go to bed. I'm sure you know that, but it happens in many families where children can go to bed whenever they wish. And that creates really unhappy children. So another thing that we all need is humor and smiling. The relaxing of the muscles when we smile, even when we don't feel like it, releases a kind of tension. Relaxing, and you feel better when you smile, even if you don't mean it at first. Why do children like to swing? Because I think I mentioned this long time ago when we spoke, but when when they're swinging and they go way up like this and there's that little lift and they're way up there, you see them smile. They laugh. That little lift, it's the change, and they begin to smile. And that happens when they jump rope. You will not ever see a child jumping rope, or rarely, where they're not laughing, because it's that little lift. It lifts them out of themselves. And lifting themselves out, that's the basic gesture of humor, is it lifts you out of yourself. This little lift. And it lifts others when you laugh, when there's humor. It's a gesture of buoyancy. And don't we all need that? Don't we all need more laughter, more buoyancy, more humor? And humor changes a rock-hard constitution. The whole physical body is lifted up when we have humor and when we laugh. And most of us really don't get enough laughter. I was fortunate to grow up with a father and a mother who laughed all the time. And they were able to do these silly little jokes that kids love, that are just kind of crazy and sort of corny, but children love it. And see if you can find those kind of things that make your children laugh, even if you don't feel like it. And I think the cultivation of humor is an art. The cultivation of laughter is an art. And the ability to bring humor into our home, the ability to make our children laugh, is a real gift. And lastly, the attention and interest. Do we give our children attention? Do we look at them when we're speaking to them? Do we listen when they're speaking to us? Or are we looking at our phone? Or are we thinking about something else? I'm saying that to myself too. Do we listen? Do we pay attention? There's nothing worse than a child who's trying to talk to a parent. I shouldn't say there's nothing worse, but it's difficult when a child is talking to their parent and their attention is somewhere else. It's either on the phone or it's thinking about something else. They're looking around. But that interest is one of the keys to a child's inner development. The interest and attention. So are we really present for our children? Do we look at them when we speak out without our phones, without scattered thoughts? And thinking about how wonderful it is that we can be with our child. I've made it a practice to, even with my 16-year-old grandson, to tell him every time I have a Zoom call. And I've done that consciously because I feel like if I just disappear into the room and shut the door, he doesn't know for sure where I am or what's going on. But it's this interest and attention and care. I always say I have a Zoom call from 7:30 to 8 or 7:30 to 9 or whatever. I do the same thing when I have a long phone call. I'm going to be on the phone for 20 minutes. And when I'm finished, I'll be there for you. So you're giving the child the assurance that you are present for them. And they're so grateful. They can't tell you that, but they're so grateful. And it creates this rhythm and this constancy in their lives. And the other thing is, do you turn your phones off for meals? I mean, I imagine you have the same rule that there's no phones at mealtime. Do we have a rule that there are no cell phones for meals? Some kids said, cell phones make you look at them. So even if your cell phone is sitting right beside you, you're looking at it. And that creates this this lack of interest, this looking away, not paying attention. So I just would like to share those few thoughts with you, and there's so many more, but just those few thoughts that my feeling is these are gifts of the pandemic that have brought us to attention, to pay attention and realize that our children are in trauma, whether we see it or not, and that these are some of the things that we can do to help bring rhythm and constancy and care and warmth to our children. So thank you.
Thank you, Joan. It's always illuminating when you come and share your thoughts with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank
I've
you.
missed you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Did anyone have any questions for Joan?
Joan, I do. One of the gifts of the pandemic are mask mandates in schools. What do you think they do to kids?
I think they're terrible. I mean, to the question, what do they do for kids? In terms of an emotional, social reality, you can't see the person, you can't read the emotion. So I think that a lot of emotional sort of relationships have been cut off because of that. I think they've been necessary at certain points. So there's that reality. But if we're talking about what do they do for children, at first it must have been terrifying. I think it was terrifying for young children to see them. You couldn't see the person. All you could see were their eyes. So I think it was very damaging. I could say a lot more, but I think, just a nutshell, I think it was damaging. Necessary, but damaging.
I really appreciated your speaking to the rhythm. I think it's something that everyone knows and everyone needs to be continuously reminded of, because the world is so chaotic that it's so easy to get pulled into that chaos. And our job is to really protect our children and keep that safe space for them to grow in. Protect them. But I think it's also something that adults need to do. Also, is kind of advocate for their own rhythm as well. Right. And I think it's super important. I think it's something that people underrate the importance almost continuously. It's almost celebrated if you can handle or are constantly handling chaos in our society, which is super toxic in my opinion.
That's a really important point. Thank you.
Joan, I had a question. Do you have any thoughts or comments regarding getting young children into rhythms that are starting school versus like I have an 11-year-old that has been deregulated because of the world, and how, he was in rhythm before the pandemic took him out. So any kind of significant points of, working with the rhythm within home and school with the early childhood versus a preteen or older child?
Is he back in school now?
Yes.
Well, again, I think these are just what I brought tonight are just, 5 different, very sort of fundamental things. But one of the things that might help more than anything is an evening routine with him. Really spending time with him in the evening, whether you're reading, he may be right at that cusp where instead of reading, he wants to just talk. That happens right around 11, 12. They don't want to read anymore, or maybe they do, but they also want to talk, and sometimes just being really quiet with him. The other thing is giving him foot rubs at night, if he'll let you, maybe 11, 12-year-olds might not, but just spending time with him, giving him a back massage, giving him a foot rub, all those things, your attention. I think we all forget that we are the most important dimension in our child's lives. They look to us more than we can ever imagine. And spending that kind of special time with him is vital. One of the things that I wanted to mention just real briefly is that in my own childhood, my dad, or three of us that were older, one was much younger, but my dad took a special time once a week. My day was Monday to be with him. And I just have these memories of living here in Prescott and walking down the street to the drugstore to get an ice cream soda every Monday afternoon for a couple of hours or an hour. Giving him a special time that's his at a regular time every week. Do you know what I mean? Just to bring back this sense of rhythm and belonging and getting, you use the word, I think, deregulated, help him or be regulated. I don't know if that's helpful, but just being with him.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
Joan, I just wanted to quickly thank you. I heard some semblance of this talk when my son was in kindergarten and 5, and he's now a senior about to graduate. And I'm sitting here thinking of all the things that I took in and implemented in my own home in terms of, I started meal calendars, and he could look to the calendar and see what I was making. And I would start dinner right as soon as we got home, and all of these different things that you're talking about. And it just improved our lives tremendously, and improved him and his character and his well-being. And we now, all these years later, we know he has several different diagnoses, but at the time we didn't know. But we just saw so much improvement by implementing these very specific rhythms in our home, because he was very much that child who was, well, what are we going to do after school? And what do I need to do? And where are we going to go? And this and that and this and the other thing. And so having those plans and that regularity and that rhythm, not necessarily a rigid schedule, but that rhythm just improved his life tremendously. So I just want to say thank you. And I'm so grateful. And I hope that we have a lot of guests tonight who are hearing this. If not, I hope they read it in the minutes, because it's so valuable and so wonderful. And just thank you again for being here.
Oh, thank you so much.
Anyone else before we move on? No, and thank you again. You're so welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to go put your feet up and relax.
I will do the latter. Thank you. And I'll see you in a month.
Thanks again.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Joan.
Have a good weekend.
You as well. Okay. And I have to apologize. Michelle, I did not introduce you as a guest. If you wanted to do a quick introduction, that would be wonderful.
Hi, thank you. Michelle Kratzer, and I am the Parent Council Chair.
Thank you. And Mr. Maurizio, I also didn't have a chance to introduce you. So if you'd like to introduce yourself and then just launch right on into your report, that would be wonderful.
You bet. Good evening, everybody. I'm Frank Maurizio, the proud executive director at DMS, and I have several situations to explain that are wonderful news, and a couple situations to explain that I'm a little dismayed about. I'll start with the bad news, kinda. The progress or lack of progress on our wood shop and our bathroom, adult bathroom and lobby down at the high school. Things are just hung up, waiting for the city of Phoenix to approve our permits, and it's just taken way too long for my taste, and it's bothering me. And I call my contractor every week, and he checks and says, "I'm sorry, Frank, the city's just really backed up." That's the only answer they will give me, is there's projects everywhere, and you're not at the top of the list right now. So I'm sorry. I had hoped by spring break we would be in the wood shop. Clearly that is not going to happen, as it probably won't even be started by spring break. And that bothers me. But I will keep pushing it now with a new goal that we open the new school year with those two projects completed. Some good news. I was able to attend the senior projects last night. There were 2 nights of them, Monday and Tuesday night, and I went on Tuesday night.
We lost audio. We aren't able to hear you.
Am I back?
Yes. We heard that you went on Tuesday. That's where we lost you.
Okay. So I went on Tuesday, and I want to give kudos to a couple of adults before I talk about the kids. Crystal Lee did a wonderful job as their class sponsor and assisting them with their projects. And Paula Cummings, our senior class, the project manager for this, did an outstanding job. I saw made guitars. I saw a from scratch made greenhouse that is now operational on our campus. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank Hector and Steve for assisting this student. But really, it was the student's idea and fortitude that got us through that. And I'm so proud of that. I saw a student who happens to be a talented writer actually write and illustrate a poetry book. It had about 35 poems in it with about 20 illustrations. And she actually sewn it together herself. And she is putting it on the market. She is going to get it published. That was a major wow for me. That truly was an amazing project she did. And there were several others. We had a young man actually design and code a electronic game, a video game. Wow. At 17, just wow. And again, so I just want to make sure you know there's excellent work going on, and our kids did a great job, and I'm just very proud of them. Second piece of really good news, I'll start by thanking Michelle and Nellie, because I saw them there, and Parent Council overall for the work project they did in clearing out and basically cleaning up the riparian. You can actually walk around it right now without getting poked in the eye by a lower branch or tree. And the ground swell has been taken out, and it actually, you can rub your feet in some sand there. It is excellent. I couldn't be prouder of the work they did. I want to say it was last Friday as school ended on the half day, about 1 o'clock, they converged, and they were there for a good 4 or 5 hours to get it all done. And I'm just, again, very happy that our parents are willing to roll up their sleeves and do that kind of work. So thank you to you both and the crew that you led. That was awesome. Some other projects that I need to tell you about. Our student enrollment. We're down to 284. We lost 2 students this week, but that's kind of holding steady around the 287. I did report to you in my written report that as of today, we have 316 students enrolled for next year, with 24 in the 9th grade class. That is wonderful. If that class really stays that way, and I'm not silly or naive enough to believe that on March 2nd, that is absolutely what they're going to do. I know several parents enroll in 2 schools and then wait to see how it goes. And by the way, that happens in all schools, guys. I'm used to that. But it certainly is positive that they've gone ahead and thrown their name in the hat. 24 freshmen is doubling the class size from this past year. And so we're very pleased about that. If we get Mr. Tanner's 30 the next year, we will be well on our way to 70 to 75 students in the high school, which is exactly what we want. Tomorrow night is high school information night for all 8th graders and their parents. And we'll kind of roll out a red carpet and answer some questions from parents and students who show up. There'll be some nice little surprises about possible entrepreneur classes in business and a sustainability program as well. And so those of you interested, you're welcome to come by and listen to that. We do have 2 job openings still, a special ed teacher and a regular ed teacher for next year. That, of course, is the first grade teacher, as our 8th grade teacher did tell us he is not going to make the move down to first grade. So we do have the first grade teacher posted, and we have hired a new 6th grade teacher, and her name is Kelsey Thompson, and she's off to a really good start, especially developing rapport with the kids from day one. We're very happy about that. Dr. Darian and I are providing her with a lot of support. So it's a smooth 10 weeks. And I think that's it, unless anybody has any questions.
I just have a quick question about this wood shop, because I just want to see this built. Can we pay a fee to expedite the permit, or is that not something that the city of Phoenix does, or is it too expensive?
My contractor tells me that's not how it works. And April, I know your husband works for the city of Phoenix. You could confirm that that's kind of favoritism. You can't do that, I believe. So no.
My husband was a contractor there for a while as an engineer. So he knows some people in the office. He works at another company, but he contracted there. So I can't answer your questions. I don't know. And I don't think he would know either.
I do know, just because you have a little bit more money, that's a form of favoritism.
Right.
They're not supposed to do that. I'm not going to say that it never happens, but certainly I believe there are ethics rules there that should. I was
just wondering if that was an option, if they said, nope, you can sit 4 months, or you can pay an extra $300 and get your permit. I don't know how the city of Phoenix works.
Yeah, I don't know those details. The contractor we have, I've asked him several times. He's like, Frank, it's just the way it goes. It's like a bill in Congress. It's on a stack, and whoever's next goes next.
How many families have left since January?
I don't have that at the tip of my tongue. I can find that out and email all of you tomorrow.
Okay. It just seems like they come in, but you also have waiting lists, so you're filling them rather quickly.
We're pretty much we're out of waiting lists now. There might be one on first grade or one on 7th grade, but we've let everyone in now that has registered. But we did another tour today with 20 new families. Now, none of them are trying to come in right today. This is all for next year. But next year we have quite a waiting list, because many of them happen to be in the grades that are already filled, like 1, 2, 3, 8. 8 is full for next year.
Okay, 20 families is a good tour.
Yeah, and we've been averaging that, Nellie. We've done 3 tours in the last 5 weeks, and it's about 20 families per tour.
Are they giving feedback on what they like and what they don't like?
Yeah, there's a general excitement. I know Dr. Darian, Miss Bonnie, and Miss Crystal are the ones in the middle of those tours and helping answer questions. And clearly, they absolutely love the site, the physical beauty of our site. Obviously, it is a huge difference from a concrete jungle that one is used to in a public school sector. And so that's an automatic ooh, wow moment. And I don't just mean the animals. I mean the greenery, the paths, the garden, the flowers. That's all really positive, and they can't help but think that's really cool, to be quite honest. They also like the idea, the Waldorf policy, that you stay with your teacher for 8 years. That's a positive for many parents. They're like, really? How does that work? And Dr. Darian's able to talk them through that, and the importance of the teacher becoming one with the group, and the group becoming one with the teacher. It's that they like that. I would say those are the two top situations they talk positively about.
Thanks for all that, Frank.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Thank you, Frank. We'll keep our fingers crossed for those permits to come soon. Okay. And now we'll move on to continuing business and open issues. I'd like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the February 16th, 2022 regular board meeting.
Second.
Thank you, Dan. Any discussion? Oh, okay. All those in favor? All those opposed? All right. And I'm assuming our new soon-to-be board members are abstaining from, being not quite board members just yet from a paper perspective. Thank you. Motion passes. And then I'd also like to move to approve the executive meeting minutes that will not be available for public viewing. They are maintained in confidentiality. Like to move to approve those executive meeting minutes from the 2/16/2022 executive session.
Second.
Thank you, Dan. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, looks like it passes unanimously. April, thank you. All right, moving on to new business. The first item on our agenda is a diversity, equity, and inclusion program. I put this on as agenda, so I'll kick off the conversation. Is that it's ever more clear that this is something that we need within Desert Marigold. And I've had a preliminary conversation with Sarah Bays, as she specializes in this area as well, just to kind of get some brainstorming ideas. It's going to be, I think it needs to be a bigger program. I like the idea of being able to find a way to have a firm that's familiar with these types of programs and issues sort of manage and help us implement this rather than us recreating the wheel. But of course, there is the issue of funding. So I'm hoping also that we can maybe find some grants to help support that kind of a program. So wanted to open it up for conversation, any ideas, discussions, thoughts? Don't everybody jump in at once.
I have a question for Ben. Ben, does ASU have a program that they have developed and like and use? And would it be available to a small charter school like us?
That's a good question. I don't know if there's a university-wide program. At the Honors College, we also hired a firm to work with us for, I think it was last year. I could definitely look into it, but I don't know the answer off the top of my head.
Okay.
I almost feel like we need to, as a board, maybe create a little subcommittee, obviously with members of administration. Frank, Sarah Bays has also raised her hand as wanting to be part of maybe exploration of what's out there and, start putting that together. Does anyone have desire to kind of jump on that? Or bandwidth, I guess I should say. It's probably usually more of a bandwidth issue.
I can help.
I'd be happy to participate as well if remote is an option still for that.
Okay. So Mariah and Dan from the board, thank you for taking that on. I know it's going to be an involved process and one that I think we need to move forward very quickly on also to get us kind of up to speed.
Kristen, if there's Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, please go ahead.
You talked about bandwidth. Mine is very low right now, as you know. This is very important to me. I'm going to get emotional. I don't want to get emotional. I'll just say that whatever I can do behind the scenes, if you need me to research, if you need me to make phone calls, send emails, ask questions, any of those types of things, I just don't think I can be a part of the nitty gritty and all the meetings and the talking it out and whatever. But if you have assignments to give, I'm happy to take those on and do that work behind the scenes and then just forward information. And if the bandwidth magically opens up, I'll join in on all of those meetings if that's worthwhile, or if we don't have enough people or whatever.
Would you like asynchronous involvement, basically?
That sounds great. Thanks, Dan.
Cool. It encourages us to be more mature about our communication methods as well. So.
Well, that's great. So maybe I'll get the initial four of you in touch with each other, and maybe you guys can start formulating a plan of how best to start tackling, getting a sustainable program, and then maybe provide us regular updates. And I'd also like to put my name in the hat with April of if there's any kind of thing that I can be tasked with. I don't have any bandwidth at this point in time, but it's also very important to me. And anytime you have a thing that we might be able to farm out to the rest of the board members, or I'm sure there's lots of hands waiting to help. But we'll let you guys kind of head that off and let us know. Does that work? Dan, Mariah, Frank?
Works.
Good. All right, great.
Kirsten, I can tell you, Sarah and I have already been researching some places online. We haven't found something that we've gone, oh, there's the one, but we will continue doing that. And when we get a couple, I will talk to the people who just volunteered and say, come in and look at what we found, and we'll go from there. And we'll report back to this group what we find.
Fantastic. Yeah, I spoke with Sarah also, and she mentioned that she was doing a lot of research on what other Waldorf schools are doing too, so that we don't lose, the importance of what's grade appropriate, and just have our own Waldorf flavor to it while still being, relevant and making sure that we are all inclusive. So it's, it's a bit of a task. Great. Okay. Next up, the board election process timeline. April, I didn't know if you wanted to speak to it. If you wanted me to, I'm certainly happy to do it as well. But you get the points for the reminder because I missed it.
Yes, and this is why I put everything on a calendar, because I will forget. Oh no, I just went back on my file. Hold on, give me 1 second. Let's pull it up. Okay, so one of the things that we've been talking about is getting all of our information in writing, how to be a board member, if you will. Gregory did his playbook. I know I'm working on something for the next secretary. And this is another piece, the board election process. So I went through minutes and minutes and minutes of the last few times we've done elections and had board applications, and went through and just created a step-by-step guide for us so that we can see exactly what it is that we're supposed to do, how we're supposed to do it, the order in which they're supposed to do it. You'll see in the document that I sent out that I put in sample motions. For me, the wording is just so tricky, and it just helps me to have something to look at to remember, okay, I got it right. Because with this stuff, you have to get it right. The state has to look at these minutes and approve it, and you have to submit them for a lot of these amendments. So this is for us. This is for the people who come after us, so that they're not reinventing the wheel. And I just like things to be simple, and I love that this is here, and I can look at it every 6 months. I don't have to remember what I said or who said it or anything. It's just right here. Anyone could pull this up and read previous, motions and put a new name. And I think that's very helpful. The other thing that I want to talk about on this board election process is there's a question at the very end that says, when can new members vote? So I just want to explain a couple things to our audience. You've probably noticed that some of our board members are not voting. I have had some training recently and have learned a lot about the amendment process that needs to occur with the Arizona State Board for Charter Schools. So when we get a new member, we vote on them, we accept the votes, and then we collect their paperwork, we submit it to the state, and then they have to approve it. Once they approve it, then that new member is an official member according to the state. And that's when they receive their voting rights. So we have had to take some corrective action. That's fine. We're learning, we're growing, we're moving forward. So that is the way that it will be from now on, is as we add new people in this upcoming election, they will be marked as guests until their amendments are approved from the state, and then they will officially be board members and will receive all of their voting rights. So hopefully that clears some of that up. The other document that you received was the proposed timeline. I'm not going to go over this too closely. This is something that I've been doing since I got here as the secretary, to just put forward a very specific timeline. This is the date when we put it on the agenda. This is the date when we send out a communication. This is the date when we have our first meeting. This is when board applications are due. And I just update it. I have two. I have one for the fall and one for the spring. And this is, again, something that future board members can use and just update. It's the same every time. I just look at my calendar and change the dates. But I find it very helpful because then we can put all of these things on the agenda, all of these things on our calendar, and we don't forget, and everything goes out at the right time, and people aren't scrambling and having to frantically attend 2 meetings before, and we have talked about changing it back to 1 a month. When we have 1 meeting a month, that can be difficult for people to make 2 meetings within a 6-month period. So we really have to get this information out in a timely manner to let people know these are the obligations that you have to even be considered an applicant to the board. The other thing that I've been working on to update, which I don't have ready yet, but is our VSWA board membership procedures document. I just want to put in some more information about these guidelines to specify you have to have this document in this timeline. You'll be listed as a guest until you've been approved, those types of things. And some of the links were incorrect. So I just cleaned up the document, and I'll be sending this out because we will eventually need to approve the updates and, put it on our website, because I just want to get this done before we have applicants, which I know it sounds so early. It's March, but May is like that. You have plays, absolutely. And then all of a sudden we're doing board interviews. It's so fast. It goes by so fast. So I'm not jumping the gun. I'm on top of things. I'm getting it done. That was a lot of information. Any questions? Did I miss anything? Oh, apart from motions, I do have some motions I need to make.
I just have one question, just because you've been looking into it, April. And I know that you've been in the community a long time, and also Mr. Tanner and Michelle, the 3 of you have probably been here the longest sitting on the board. Has it always been, the election process always been that the board members vote each other on? And has there ever been discussion about changing the bylaws to having the community vote members on?
Mr. Tanner's been here longer than I have, but I've never seen anything different. I know right before I joined the board, they had just revised their bylaws, but they've been that way since I've been here. I haven't seen anything different other than board members voting board members on.
I think I found original bylaws at some point, and it was, as far as I remember, similar to how we have it now. It wasn't community-based voting, and I'm not sure what the intention or thoughts behind that were.
Would it ever be something we want to put on the agenda to discuss in changing the bylaws? Do we ever have a meeting specific just to go over to change bylaws and have topics on that?
I've never seen specific meetings for that. It's just been on the agenda when they're working through it.
Okay.
So if it's something you want to put on the agenda, I just need to know 24 hours beforehand so I can make sure and post it on time or raise a motion. We can put that on the agenda anytime.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And April, the next meeting, the next new item discussion was board interviews. Did you want to discuss that, or was that kind of everything rolled up into one?
I think that's all rolled up into one. I didn't realize that was my topic. But I do have, just since we're talking about these.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. No,
I do have some
it's mine.
Oh, okay.
I just, it's been a long day.
Did you want me to make those motions first before you move on to interview this next topic?
We certainly can. I have them all under proposed motions, but if you want to make them now, since they're kind of relevant to what we're talking about, that's fine.
I think so. Okay. Since we just discussed it.
Sure. Let's do it.
Pull it up. Make sure I got it. Okay. So, with the training that I received and the knowledge about how these amendments are made, we have made some mistakes. As I said, we need to take some corrective action. So you will notice some motions that have been made previously, and we need to do those over and correctly. And we also, Frank and I and Kristen have discussed adding another charter representative. Something that I learned in the training was that many schools have their executive director as a charter representative. They might have legal as a charter representative, someone with some special qualifications at the school as a charter representative. And Frank and I talked about this because he was initially, don't give me something else to do. But here's the thought behind it. Charter representatives receive the emails that come from the Arizona State Board for Charter Schools. I speak educator, I speak special education, partially. I do not speak administrator. So I might get an email and have no idea what it means, what it's talking about. I know that Frank could look at that and within 2 seconds, his 30 years of experience will go, oh yeah, they're talking about to that. So instead of having the charter representative who may not understand the email receive it and wonder, do I forward this? Do I keep it to myself? What do I do with this? It would just go straight to Mr. Marizio. Of course, I would receive it as well, and anyone else who is a charter representative. And then there's just more clarity and understanding, and the information is getting to the right people. In addition to that, I've been told by ASBCS that they'll be holding trainings for other people. I've yet to see that happen. I've yet to see notice of that. I certainly want our executive director to have the training that I received. I think that all executive directors should have it. It doesn't make any sense to me that there's not a specific training for executive directors. And I did ask about that, and they said, no, we don't have that. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I believe having Frank as our charter rep is a great plan. It will help solve a lot of these issues. So that being said, I'm going to make some motions here. I'm just going to go through them one at a time. I move that the board accepts the completed term of Gregory Schneider, who served from 11/20/2018 to 11/20/2021.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? No, I think that was unanimous.
I'm sorry, I'm having to toggle between two screens, so
no worries.
Bear with me. I move to elect Kristen Kubina as a charter representative for the VSWA with the Arizona State Board for Charter Schools.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? I'm abstaining. It's dealing with myself. Okay.
Okay, I move to elect Frank Maurizio as a charter representative for the VSW 8A with the Arizona State Board for Charter Schools.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Yeah. Motion passes. I believe that was all of them. Am I correct? Okay, great. So back to my agenda topic. I'm so sorry for the oversight. Board interviews. Some of you may have been reached out to in part of the continued of the contemplation. There was an idea of board interviews being conducted. I believe it was a 20-minute, recorded answering some predefined questions, and then 10 minutes of community questions. Those all being recorded. And as part of the contemplation exercise, it wasn't very clear if we decided as a board if that was a good way to get people to, kind of get to know us. I had responded back to Peter just asking to provide a little bit more color on where the value would lie with the community of having these kind of pre-recorded interviews. So and we weren't sure had we decided on a vote at a board meeting to fully, yes, we're going to do those. No, we're not going to do those. We had other suggestions. So wanted to bring it up for a topic of discussion, see if anyone had any thoughts or opinions.
This, just for clarification, this was a request coming out of the contemplation?
Not sure if it was a direct request, more of an idea of being able to bridge the gap between community and board.
Okay.
If I can speak to that, and I know Danielle's not here, but
yeah,
I wish she was, because Danielle and John and I were there, and I do not remember this being part of the original contemplation when we met in the Eurythmy room for those days. I believe this is something new coming out of the smaller groups. And so this was not something the whole group accepted as a, yes, we should do this. John, am I remembering that incorrectly?
Your recollection is the same as mine, but if I didn't hear it, then I want to put that out as a statement beforehand. But your memory is the same as mine.
I think I would like to sit with Barb. I know she's on as a participant right now. I haven't had a chance to meet with her since the contemplation, and it might be good for her and I to sit down and talk through this a little bit, because again, I do not remember that as one of the things that the three pillars said, board, we want you to do this. I remember several other things like town halls and board members signing up and being present at events, and asking Joan to speak on Waldorf prior to each, or I think once a month board meetings, and responding, having someone respond to emails in a much quicker and friendlier fashion. I remember all of those things. I even remember us instituting that board members would be on campus once in a while to talk to a parent who wanted. I've seen April sitting at picnic tables. I've seen Danielle at many events. I've seen Nellie on the patio. So I've seen more ability for people to communicate with our board members, but I do not remember this piece of anything being interviewed and taped. I believe this is new. And again, I'm not, I just would like to sit with Barb and talk with her about this and get some clarification and then bring it back to you at the next meeting.
Michelle, do you have any recollection if this came from one of the small group breakouts?
I do believe it did come from more of the smaller group. But I mean, there were some things that were agreed upon or were talked about, and I think agreed upon at the contemplation. For instance, communities, for the open comments, community comments were talked about, and I think this is that's not happening. So how can we get more communication with the board type of thing? So
I do remember, Michelle, that was on the list of things that they wanted to see happen. And I remember this board accepting all those other things and not that one. We had some talk about, should we have an open mic type thing? And I remember Gregory distinctly recommending, one of the bad things about open questions is the board cannot have two-way dialogue with the person asking, because they are not allowed to answer a question that is not on the agenda. And he thought it would be better that people would want open dialogue to be able to say, Mr. President, is it true, blah, blah, blah? And Mr. President can answer right on the spot. And his suggestion was the town halls, which we've been doing once in 9 weeks. And I think they've been going positively, and every question that's been asked has been answered at a town hall. But for those of you who were on the board then, I'm sure you remember that was his suggestion, so that parents felt you get to ask your question and we get to give you an answer. Am I right in saying that? Anyone want to comment?
Yes, I do remember that. I would love, Frank, for you, when you go talk to Barb or any other parents that are involved in this idea, I would love to see something from the contemplation, whatever it is they decide, whatever it is that they want to propose to us. I would love to see something in writing from the contemplation that comes to the board that says this is what we're asking, so that it's very clear. Maybe, if they're wanting to interview us, maybe show us the questions. Just because
I've gotten that.
Okay. Yeah.
I assumed everyone had, but
I would really like it to be clear to know what it is that I'm saying yes to, because obviously I'm a volunteer. This should be voluntary. I want to know what I'm saying yes or no to, so that I can make a conscious decision and have all the information.
April, my point is the entire contemplation did not have time to deliberate and discuss that request. That came from a small group after the contemplations stopped meeting as a whole. I didn't mean to skip you, Mariah. You were there for a lot of this too. And I'm not sure I'm comfortable that 4 people got together a month afterwards and made a new request without the rest of the 16 to 20 people being in the room to deliberate over it. So my feeling is this did not come from the entire group in the contemplation. John, Mariah, Michelle, if you feel like chiming in on that, please do.
I will say, sorry.
I'll chime in. Go ahead, Michelle.
It's not a contemplation thing. The people who did it are from the contemplation, but it's not a part of the contemplation.
And I'll just say I'm fine with, hearing with Frank going back and talking with Barb. My only hesitation is outside of quorum, this group really can't do any collective processing conversations governance, if you're working, even if you have all of us that are, if we're not a quorum, but if you have separate groups that are segregated just so we won't meet quorum and still have agendas, that's doing governance work. And you cannot formulate outside of a meeting that is posted and that is collected with an agenda. We really can't practice any kind of conversations within the frame of being a board, if that makes sense. We can talk as individuals, but I have been on many boards where that dialogue of one-offs is highly, that usually people are telling us not to do that because it could be perceived as governance work outside of actually a agenda and a posted meeting.
Mariah, you're referring to the actual interview process that would like to do, correct?
Correct. You can interview people individually, but you can't. I would caution in doing interviews with board members. And again, it might be a silly nuance, but I think it's more significant than maybe we're suggesting.
Thank you, Mariah. I appreciate the insight. We're definitely striving to make sure we're dotting all our I's and crossing all of our T's as far as compliance. So I appreciate your sharing your experience with us.
I have a quick question. I'm sorry. I just realized that Scott disappeared. Does anyone know when he left? I need to mark it in the minutes. And I'm constantly staring at my screen. I don't know when he disappeared. If anyone thinks of it, email me later. 5 minutes ago? Okay. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so maybe as a follow-up item, Frank, if you'll still meet with Barb and Peter or whoever those representatives are, sounds like maybe the recorded interviews isn't a good idea, but maybe if we get a little bit more framework about what we're hoping to accomplish, we can find a more creative solution. Thank you. Okay. All right, moving on. That took us through our new business, and now we have some proposed motions. Dan, I think everyone's on the edge of their seat for you to make yours.
Thank you, Ben, for sending us this information, by the way. I'm moving to adopt the CDC's new mask guidelines, and more specifically, asking the faculty at DMS to amend the first paragraph of the 2022 COVID-19 policy and procedure document. In line with the new CDC guidelines issued February 25th, 2022, Desert Marigold requires, this is the paragraph. In line with new CDC guidelines issued February 25, 2022, Desert Marigold requires all students and staff to wear masks while indoors when the Maricopa County community level is listed as high, according to the CDC. However, when community members are outdoors, masks will be optional. These outdoor times include drop-off and pickup from the parking lot, during recess and breakup times, and when walking to and from classes. On the days that masks are required, students are encouraged to bring at least 2 masks to change as needed, and students who do not have a mask will be provided one by Desert Marigold. The text basically adds the nuance of the medium versus high versus low rating that the CDC assigns a community and determines mask requirements indoor based on that. Our current rating is medium, so we would not qualify for indoor masking, I believe, under this change. Only
I'm sorry,
if we
Dan, you read the motion, can we get a second and then have this conversation? Because there's no way I'm getting all of this, and I know what the motion looks like, so I just want to be clear we get a second and then we can go into discussion.
Okay.
Sorry.
So cancel what I just said, and I'll start over. But yeah. Would anyone like to second the motion? Melly?
I second the motion. Great. And discussion.
Okay. So as I was saying out of order, the motion basically adds that nuance around community members or the community level of COVID and how they list it, and whether it's low, high, or medium, and the the metrics they use are on the CDC website. I don't think I need to go through them individually. I can be happy to send that to anybody who needs that information. I did look at the tool, make sure we do qualify. We are medium right now. And I also looked at the metrics on the Arizona Department of Health Services website. And you can see that in several areas, we're trending fast down, and it would take quite the unfortunate reversal to revert back to high. Not that it's not possible, but it seems like it would probably be unlikely. But anyways, the motion is to help us take into account these new guidelines from the CDC. Does anyone have any questions or discussion?
Yes, I have some things to add. So I looked at the CDC, I looked at Maricopa County to see if there's anything about schools that has not yet updated yet. So this is just kind of general information, but they do have a widget that you can add to your website. And I did check with Laura Keeney to see if that's something we could put on our front page, as well as pin it on Parent Square. I'm not sure that she answered that specifically, but she's such a wizard at this stuff. I'm just going to assume the answer is yes. If it's not, you can blame it on me. But I will say I noticed a disparity between the actual widget when it's separate versus using the one that's built into the CDC website. So Dan, you said that we are in Maricopa medium right now, but that data is actually from February 25th. If you use the widget on its own, which is still from the CDC, the data is more updated. It's from March 2nd, and we're actually in high transmission right now. So it would be imperative that we have the most up-to-date information using this widget on our website, and that's exactly what people are using with the most updated information. But having said that, my question is kind of to everyone, how do we manage who's in charge of checking this, telling people, I don't know if this is going to change every day, if this updates once a week. I feel like there'd be a lot of micromanaging here for teachers, for staff, for parents. So I'm wondering about just the logistics of this and if it can be managed, because it's such a changeable thing.
Frank, I'd love to get your thoughts on it, since it's, that falls squarely on you.
Look, in my opinion, the only thing worse than wearing masks is having to change our mind Monday, Wednesday, Friday. At some point, no one's going to listen to anything we're saying. That just does not make sense to me at all. The teachers are going to be put in a really bad situation. I don't even know what to say. Look, I'm all for that. Is it time to move on from this? I am. We all are. But to go back and forth because someone woke up at 4:30 and found it before someone from the school did, I just don't. And who has a widget and who doesn't? So April dug deep and found we're on high, but 10 families just looked at the date from the one a week ago, and now they're mad when they get to school and they find out they were planning on not wearing a mask. I think we are really looking at major issues here. I say we either just decide to do it or we don't, and we're not checking anything. If there's a major breakout that people start closing down, well, that's different. That'll be on the news front page for us. I just can't see that we'd be even micromanaging this more.
Good point.
John, you're in the classroom. What do you think? Sorry.
I would like to move on from this as long as it's safe and we're true to the guidelines that we set down for ourselves. And I know that with community is wanting to do as well. But I don't want to set ourselves up for failure where we're not keeping people safe.
I know I don't have a vote tonight but my comment I agree. I'm ready to move on, and there's nothing preventing us from enacting any kind of emergency trend of, all right, we're going up, or the CDC is saying everyone has to do this, that, and the other. I mean, we can take that route if necessary, but I think the back and forth sounds people aren't following anyway, and B, it sounds very tedious.
And did you have thoughts?
The back and forth is obviously ridiculous. I would agree on that. I would say that it would be, you would do something where you would do it weekly, or something like that, but that would be still pretty back and forth. I'm super curious as to what made us switch back to high from medium, because almost all the other metrics I've seen for everything seem to be dropping. So I was obviously thinking that with that motion that it would be extremely unlikely there would be flipping, unless there was something significant to occur. So that obviously is not intentional in the motion. What were you going to say, Kristen? Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to ask Ben if you had any thoughts or anything that you wanted to add to the discussion.
Sorry, I was busy trying to find the widget, which I can't.
No worries. You don't have to add anything either. I just don't want you to be excluded.
No, thanks. I mean, maybe it requires a sort of rewording of the policy so that we just decide one way or the other at least for the moment. And if the numbers go way up, then we decide something new. My interest all along in this has been to sort of abide by what's set out as a legal standard of care that's very publicly advertised and everyone knows about. And this is one of them. I can't say I always agree with it. I don't think it necessarily makes a lot of sense, even from a straightforward public health perspective. But my personal feelings about that are different than those of the person on board of directors at a school. So yeah, I mean, I don't have a vote on this anyway. But I do think I haven't seen the sort of new numbers from the widget. My sense is the same as Dan's, that I thought that the numbers were going down like steadily, and that like there wouldn't be this switching back and forth. I can see how logistically it would pose some issues. I mean, the most straightforward way would just be to email the whole school when our status changes. I can see how that would lead to enforcement issues, and I guess I would trust Mr. Tanner and Mr. Maurizio about just how enforceable this kind of system is.
So what do you think?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Dan, you and I are just...
It's all right. Go ahead. I'll listen longer.
Michelle, from I know that you can't speak for all of parent council, but we're all here, so I'm curious to hear everyone's thoughts.
I just being on campus and stuff like that, I see a lot of not wearing masks and that kind of stuff. And I'm almost thinking that we're we're already kind of doing that. It's not being as enforced anymore, but I'm also at the point that the people who are going to wear masks are going to wear masks, and those who don't will not. And I know everybody's done with it.
Yeah. Nellie, we hadn't heard anything from you either. I know we know how you feel, but I didn't want to exclude you in any way and wanted you to be able to share.
I appreciate that. I've spent a lot of time over the past 2 weeks trying to find people that are middle ground to see where they stand, because I know we're the polar opposite stand, and I wanted to hear, because I feel that, as you all know, I repeat this all the time, I feel it's important to hear from the community, and I wanted to reach out to the middle ground. And a lot of the people that are on the middle ground they recognize that the tools are there. People know that if they want to get vaccinated, they can vaccinate. If they want to wear masks, they can wear masks. But we're at the point where we're in year 3 now, where people should be able to make their own decisions for their family. And I second this motion because, I feel that, first of all, masks should be optional. And if we are going to be posting widgets on our website listing COVID numbers, then we should also be making sure that we pay attention to, again, the Parent Bill of Rights, where the parents are able to make decisions for their family and their children, including health decisions. So I've repeated that numerous times. We don't need to rehash on that. You guys all know where I feel. But that's, that's where I will stand on that.
Yeah, did you have something else?
I'm just trying to think about how to proceed.
So we can vote, we can, raise another motion to, add some different language around it. There is a motion on the table, so we should probably vote on it. And of course we can raise another one.
I think it's important to call out that we're voting on adopting the latest CDC guidelines, and made a suggestion of how it might be implemented in the policy of the school, but didn't actually specify that it must be implemented in that way. And that the school might decide that it's too onerous to be toggling daily, so that they would be unless there was some major flip or something and it went crazy high, and managed to do some, like, you could add like some light language, like outside of extreme circumstances, we're only going to check every 2 weeks or once a month or once a week or whatever, or something like that. So you could, or make it that there's all sorts of ways you could craft a policy around this that I don't think we should necessarily, we don't want to make it a giant pain and put all this work on Frank, obviously, and Deb, but I'm not saying but as in we're going to do that. I mean, like, we don't want to do that. So I think it's important that we should work on providing some sort of guidance and what our intention is. But I think that if it dips below and then goes back up, and then I think it's almost like you feel like it should maintain a certain upness effectively before you consider that the new trend. And maybe you don't want to just be riding this up, down, little wavy line. So a lot of times when you're making decisions off of metrics and data like that, you wait for actual trends to form before you switch back or do anything like that. So I think that would be definitely in my opinion, that would be within the realm of rational, data-driven decision-making of the school from a faculty policy perspective, faculty's policy creating perspective. I guess that's all I would say.
Mariah, it looks like your hand is raised. Did you want to add something as well? Or was that like a mistake?
No, that was no mistake. I was just trying to get attention. I'm saying this with love. I don't want to discuss and go down justifications anymore. I would suggest that the motion needs to be cleaned up and then people take a vote. Like I'm just let's move on. And if something happens, then let's bring the COVID conversation back. But I think I'll speak for myself. I'm done talking about COVID. I think we all know where we'll land. And I would actually, if I had voting rights, I wouldn't be landing voting in my normal trend. I think I would want to wrap it up. So I suggest that we amend the motion on the floor and then vote.
Happy to amend it, simplify it. I move to adopt the CDC's new mask guidelines issued February 25th, 2022. That's it.
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
I have a question.
Sure.
That recommendation, based on the widget April read to us, does not allow to change anything. We're just accepting the new CDC recommendation, and because it doesn't fall in medium, we're staying with mandated masks indoors right now, correct?
I mean, until we find more evidence that if that's correct, then that's correct. But it does allow you to say that the minute, when it drops below medium at some point, or does it for 2 consecutive weeks, that then you don't have to come back to the board to once again ask, figure out and adopt new policy. You're given flexibility to remove the mask mandate at minimum.
Okay.
That's not what I was suggesting, but I didn't put the motion up front.
That's not what, Mariah?
That's not what I was suggesting, but this isn't my motion.
Oh.
Are you suggesting more of yes, no?
Correct. That we're removing the mandation of mask as optional.
I think that I would love that. So I don't know how we can change that motion, Dan. Or
we're trying to keep within the idea of the standard of care and following CDC or some official organization's medical recommendations. So we could say that you could vote yes on this or no on this, and then I don't know. I think completely changing the motion into something else would be something completely different than what I submitted. I'm not sure if that's okay.
I echo Dan's concerns about, again, I don't have a vote on this, but I echo those concerns about staying within the guidelines.
There is language the CDC is trending on, what's the word? There's suggestion that they're trending on relaxing mask guidance. So I'm curious if we could lean into that.
I think we should vote, and if someone else wants to put forward another motion, let's do that.
All right. Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor? It's 3 in favor. Mariah, we can't see if you are voting in favor or if...
Mariah doesn't have a vote.
I'm not allowed to vote.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. 3 in favor. All those opposed? Okay, 3 in favor, 2 opposed. Motion passes. All right. Any other motions that anyone wants to call at this time? There's a little bit of discussion about it, so I don't want to move forward too quickly.
I would like to make a motion that TMS move to mask optional.
Anybody want a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Like 3 in favor. Any opposed? And abstaining. Okay, motion passes. Okay.
How will we announce this?
That was my next question. Can we, I think we need to make another motion to just say when it will happen, when this is being implemented.
Thank you, April. That's bit us in the tail so many times. We're up at all hours in the morning trying to formulate an email. I will make a motion to, let me check my calendar here real quick. I move to make this effective as of March 7th, which would be Monday. Communications going out March 4th.
Second.
Thank you, Dan. Any discussion?
We need to update our COVID policy then. This needs to be in the COVID policy. I don't know if we need to make a motion on that or if it's just implied. If we're putting out communication, it could be implied.
Element.
Okay.
Okay, I move to make this effective.
Can we just add on to what you already said? Can I read it?
Can
I read it to you what you said?
Please.
Can we start it again? This is a rough follow. Okay, Kirsten Kubina moved to implement the mask optional policy effective as of March 7th. Communications going out March 4th. All right, now I'm typing.
With the COVID policy being updated and available on the website by the effective date.
Do you want me to make that change on the website?
I can do the change if somebody just does the edits, because I put it up on the website the last time.
Okay.
I'm sorry. That was wait. I'm sorry. I'm all over the place.
No, that's fine.
You amended it, so we need another second.
Oh.
I'm going to stare you down, Dan.
Second.
Thank you.
Dan, any other discussion? All right.
As long as Frank is nodding his head while we're talking about this stuff, I'm cool with it.
All those in favor? Sorry, I raised the motion. So 5 in favor.
This is unanimous.
Yes, thank you. Okay, motion passes.
Board, do you want me to do the email to the parents, or do one of you want to do it?
I don't have a preference. If you want to be the bearer of good news, I think you more than earned it. if you have that.
I will send it out before the school days end on Friday, letting them know this takes effect Monday morning. Am I to put any wording in there, barring any state emergency? Do I put that in, or no, just leave it?
That wasn't in our motion.
Yeah, I think we just leave it. And if we go into emergency, we'll just go into emergency.
April, send me the exact wording of the motion so I have it on my computer and I can just copy it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And
Kristen, can you give me just a second to catch up on this conversation? I just need
Absolutely.
like 1 minute before I lose it all.
no worry. Nellie, I was hoping to see you do a backflip or something. Confetti cannon.
I am having a hot flash, so I'm not sure if I'm just grateful for all of this or if I'm, almost 50. Could be either way.
Well, hopefully we're finally on the other end. We're close.
It's a nice sigh of relief. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I got it. Can I just quickly, I just want to make sure I understand what's happening. Did we lose Frank? He disappeared. Maybe he's, oh, okay. So Frank, I'm sending the motion to Frank so he knows the wording. He's sending out a communication on Friday about the new mask optional policy. Frank and someone else in administration will update the COVID policy, send it to me. I will put it on the website in a nutshell. Is that accurate? Is that what everyone else heard? Yes. Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure we got it right.
Thank you, April, for keeping us on track. Okay, and with that, I'll raise another motion. I move that we go into executive session for discussion regarding personnel matters and also inviting Frank Mauricio, Scott Edwards, if he is able to come back. Yes.
I'm sorry, I got to ask one more thing for clarification.
Sure.
We did not change if someone has COVID. We still follow that policy of you're off campus for 5 days until your symptoms are gone. But that second part is you're back with a mask. Are we ignoring that part? I hate to convolute it, but that's a totally different.
That remains the same.
Okay, because that's what the CDC still says.
Yes.
Okay.
Good clarification. Thank you. Okay. I will move that we go into executive session for discussion regarding personnel matters and also to invite Frank Mauricio, Scott Edwards, and Fong and Mariah Moon into the session.
Second.
Great. All those in favor or any discussion? All right. All those in favor? Okay. So we will move into executive session. As just for our participants, we will leave this Zoom open. We will come back after we've met in executive session. And so please feel free to stay on. We will be back. And for board members, I will be sending out executive session agenda in just a moment with a different link. And so we will meet there in maybe we say 5 minutes. So in case anybody needs to grab a drink, a beverage or use the restroom, by all means, we'll see you there in about 5 minutes. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Our 7 attendees, thank you for hanging in there with us. We are back from executive session, so we'll just give everyone a moment to jump back over.
Oh, we still have some people on. All right.
Great. I believe that's everyone. So we will finish with announcements. We have spring break upcoming March 14th through 18th. So we won't have our board meeting during that time. We'll push it to March 23rd as per the calendar.
Well, feels weird.
And we also have our town hall upcoming on March 22nd. It is at 5:30 from 5:30 to 7 and will be on the patio. So looking forward to that. And I'll go ahead and move that we adjourn the March 2nd, 2022 board meeting. Dan, Nellie, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Good unanimous one this time. And Mr. Tanner, if you would lead us in the closing verse, please.
9:30. We need to be in bed.
Just let me just go to it and
Sure.
there it is. The most important task for humankind today and in the future is that we should learn to live together and understand one another. If this human fellowship is not achieved, all talk of development is empty. And that is by Dr. Steiner.
Thank you, Mr. Tanner.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your evening, and we'll see you soon.